Hi there. Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of the Grapevine Wellness Show. I am super excited for tonight because we have Dr. Dale Kelly as my very first guest. I really wanted Dr. Kelly to be on the show. And here's why. He is a chiropractor and a functional medicine practitioner. He is the founder of Balanced Health Solutions here in Nevada, in Sparks, Nevada. And in 1992, Dr. Kelly was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Surgery and drugs were the only two options that doctors gave him. Obviously not satisfied with those options, Dr. Kelly spent over 6 months of deep clinical research on his own, learning all he could about his tumor. He discovered another treatment approach that involved correcting his diet. And wouldn't you know, to his relief, that tumor shrank, his vision returned to normal, and he got his energy back. So since then, Dr. Kelly has undertaken a mission to help others as he helped himself through a return to balanced health. So I am super excited about this, Dr. Kelly. Thank you for being my first guest on the show, and welcome.
Oh, glad to be here tonight. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So I gave kind of the 10,000 foot view and some details of your background, but I would love it if you would kind of fill us in on your background, fill in any blanks that I left out, maybe correct any issues. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be glad to. So I've been in practice for over 35 years now. And that story about my brain tumor was when I was first in practice, only about 3 or 4 years into practice at that time. And I was a young doc. I was only about 33 years old when I got diagnosed with that brain tumor. And it was a pretty devastating, life-changing event. I started doing the medication that they wanted me to. They told me I'd eventually have to have surgery, but after a couple of years of doing the drugs and all the side effects and me put on more medication for the side effects of the first drug, and you guys know how that story goes. It's just one drug after another. That's when I decided I had to take matters into my own hand and find a different solution to the problem. And that solution was what's known today as a functional medicine approach to addressing that tumor. That term functional medicine didn't even exist back in 1992. So I was kind of like my own pioneer for my own health at that point. So that's what started me on this road to where I am today, where my practice is 100% functional medicine, and that's what I deal with every day.
Fantastic. So tell us, your own research is kind of what led you to that. Tell us about how you got involved with chiropractic to begin with, and any other, how Balanced Health Solutions started other than your own research and helping your own health.
Sure. So so like I said, my practice is in Sparks, Nevada. I'm what I call a Sparks homegrown. I was born and raised here in Sparks. In fact, we just moved my mom out of the house that I came home to as a baby, so almost 64 years ago last month. And so Sparks has been my home forever and ever. The only time I left was when I went to chiropractic school up in Portland, Oregon for 4 years. So my quest for health started way back then, way back when I was first married. My wife married a concrete layer. I was pouring concrete, and I decided I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. That was pretty hard work. And so I started working at the local hospital in surgery and started I was a orthopedic scrub tech, helping orthopedic doctors and their surgeries, hip replacements and knees and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, I want to do something in medicine, but I didn't want to spend 15 years, in the medical field before I could start actually practicing. And I had a friend that was a chiropractor, and he said, hey, you need to check this out. And I had remembered as a young kid going to see a chiropractor for headaches. My mom took me to chiropractor for headaches when I was a kid. I said, that was pretty cool. And I thought, okay, I'll look more into it. And so that started me on that path. And I did my pre-med here in Reno, and then went to chiropractic school for 4 years up in Portland, and came back and set up shop.
Back home. That's awesome. Awesome. Sparks grown. That's fantastic. And so then when you were diagnosed with this tumor, that's where you're kind of your own deep dive. And, when I think about someone doing research for their own health, I think they're going to Google and they're following a path in 1992. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Dr.
Yeah.
Google wasn't around then. So,
Oh.
so
Yeah.
I actually had to go up to the University of Nevada Medical School Library, and that's where I did all my research. I'm just pouring through medical journals after medical journals for 6 months, just learning everything I could about that tumor and maybe some different options for it. So, and at that time, I was young married dad. I have 4 boys. We had 4 boys while I was in school. So, I had these 4 little boys at home and my wife, and then I had this tumor, and it was a very challenging time at that point.
I bet. Oh my gosh, how terrifying. And from a wife's perspective, when your husband has health issues, it's wow. That resonates with me for sure. So I am so glad you had that in you to go do that research and put in that work while being a father of 4 and right. So yeah. Wow. Okay. So, but we aren't here to talk about tumors. We're here tonight mostly to talk about diabetes. And so I'd like to transition into that a little bit, and maybe it's not as big of a transition as I kind of feel like it is at the moment, just, taking care of your body and
Right.
using a balanced kind of healthy lifestyle to help with these things. But diabetes is a huge deal. And I'm not, in the research that I did for tonight's episode, I was surprised a couple of times. So at what a big deal this is. So maybe you though can start us off with what diabetes is, kind of what it does to us.
Yeah. Okay. So diabetes is a big deal right now in the United States. They say that 1 out of 3 adults in the United States has diabetes or pre-diabetes. In my office, there is no such thing as pre-diabetes. I always joke, it's like being a little bit pregnant. Okay, you either are or you're not. Okay, so if you're pre-diabetic, you're in what I call the first trimester of diabetes. Maybe your doctor is telling you, hey, let's just watch it and see. Or a lot of times these days, they're starting you on the metformin and the other diabetes meds, even in the pre-diabetic range, because they know that you're eventually going to be full-blown diabetic. So they're trying to get a jump start on getting you on the meds that you're told you're going to be on for the rest of your life. So unfortunately, diabetes, if you listen to your medical doctor, and by the way, I don't have any problems with medical doctors. I always tell my patients, your doctors are doing what they've been taught. And in medical school, doctors are not taught how to fix diabetes or other chronic health problems. They're taught how to prescribe medication. They're taught how to do surgery, but they're not taught how to fix the underlying issues of chronic disease like diabetes. And so if you think about who funds the medical schools, right? It's not the doctors, it's the pharmaceutical industry. And do you think the pharmaceutical industry is interested in you getting healthy for 1 minute? There's no way. I mean, once you get labeled diabetic or some other chronic health problem, they know they have a customer for life. So why would they ever want to fix something like that? So the medical docs really aren't to blame. They just have to follow this thing called the standard of care, which is all about one drug after another and managing the symptoms, but not actually addressing the root problems. So the root problem with diabetes is not the high glucose. That's the symptom. That's why you got labeled diabetic, is because you have a high glucose. But what we want to know in the functional medicine world is what is causing that high glucose in you. And I can tell you it's different for almost every single person. There is no, number one, there is no diabetes gene. So diabetes is not a genetic disease. A lot of people say, oh, it runs in my family, so it's just a genetic. My mom had diabetes, my sister has diabetes, everybody has diabetes in my family, so we know it's genetic. That's not true. There is no diabetes gene. Does it run in families? Yes, but it's not genetic. Okay. Some people say it's an age-related thing. The older you get, you're going to have diabetes. Well, in the United States right now, 1 out of every 5 teenagers, ages 12 to 18, is pre-diabetic or diabetic. 1 out of 5. When I was a kid, 60 years ago, you never even heard of diabetes. Number one, nobody had diabetes, and definitely not any of my peers. The kids I ran around with, nobody had diabetes. But right now, 1 out of 5 of my grandkids is going to have diabetes because that's how prevalent it is.
Yeah.
So it's not an age-related problem either. Some people say it's an insulin-related problem. The more insulin you take, that's the problem. We'll just give you more insulin, that'll fix the diabetes. Well, I have diabetics that have been on insulin for 15 or 20 years, and they're shooting up to 300 units of insulin a day, yet they're still full-blown diabetic. So it's not a lack of insulin. That's not the problem. In fact, insulin is part of the problem. Too much insulin in the beginning is part of the problem because of a thing called insulin resistance, which is one of the big underlying drivers of diabetes, is a thing called insulin resistance.
Gotcha. Okay. So when I go to the doctor and I have my blood work done, which I'm being forced to do, and they tell me, okay, your sugar's high, that means you're pre-diabetic, and all the things, the test that everyone turns to is that kind of blood glucose level. Right. And then that leads doctors to say, yep, you're this is where you are, this is where you're headed, and so we're going to give you medication. But there's a lot more to it. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Right. So the typical doctor, let's say Mary goes into her doctor, maybe she's having some symptoms, maybe she wasn't. She goes in like you, and the doctor says, let's do some blood work. And the blood work comes back, and she has a glucose or a blood sugar that's 150. The normal healthy person has a blood sugar of 80 to 100 without medication. So if you're over 127, that's quote diabetes. But if you guys know anything about blood sugar, it bounces all over the place all day long. It's not a very stable number. So there's a different test that your doctor uses to diagnose you with diabetes, and that was called the hemoglobin A1C test. You may have heard of that, or A1C for short. Most diabetics know what their A1C number is, and you're told that your A1C is basically a 3-month average of your glucose numbers. So if your A1C number is 5.6 or less, that's healthy. If you're between 5.7 and 6.4, that's that pre-diabetes, that little bit pregnant range. And if you're greater than 6.4, now you're full-blown diabetic.
Gotcha.
And that's how easy you could look at anybody's blood work right now. If you looked at those two numbers, you could diagnose somebody with diabetes. That's how easy it is to diagnose somebody with diabetes. But that doesn't tell us, again, the big reason why. Why are you diabetic?
Yeah.
So the regular doc, he's going to say, yeah, you have high glucose, here's your metformin, and when that quits working, here's your second drug and your third drug, until finally we get you on insulin.
Ooh, okay. So can you tell me, maybe just give me the high points of what kind of investigation you do into how did we get here if I come in with the high glucose level or high A1C and I'm first trimester.
Okay, so again, we want to know the why. Why do you have that high glucose in the first place? And that's where the functional medicine shines, because we do a lot of testing that other doctors don't do to find out those root underlying problems with somebody. So what I am looking for is what is causing that glucose to go high. In other words, what is causing the insulin resistance in the body? You guys may have heard of that term insulin resistance, but people don't know what that really means. In my office, the big underlying cause of diabetes and most chronic health problems is a thing called cellular inflammation. It's inflammation at the cell level. We're all made up of cells. Some people say it's 10 trillion. Some people say it's 100 trillion. However many trillions of cells it is, a lot of cells. But all those cells have a couple things in common. One is a cell membrane or a covering around the cell. And when that cell membrane or that covering gets inflamed, then insulin, which is one of its jobs, is to open up a door in that cell membrane so glucose can come into the cell to make energy so the cell can do its job. If that cell membrane is inflamed, now insulin can't open up that door to get the glucose in. And so what's the body do? It produces more insulin to try and shove that door open so that glucose can get into the cell. That's the insulin resistance. Your cells are resistant to insulin being able to open the door to get the glucose in to make energy so the cell can do its job. And so that's the big $1 million question that I want to know is what is causing that cellular inflammation in you? Because it can be different in you than Sam or Susan or anybody else. We have to find out what's that underlying cause of cell inflammation with you. And so in order to do that, we do a lot of different testing that other doctors don't do to find those underlying reasons. So, for example, my standard blood test that we run on every single patient that walks in the door in my office or on Zoom or however we meet them is 75 different tests. It's like 8 or 10 tubes of blood at the lab to get enough blood to do the testing that we do. So we're looking at everything in the thyroid. There's like 10 thyroid markers alone that we look at, where most doctors will look at 1 or 2 if they're testing your thyroid. We're looking at 10. So it gives you an idea of how much more in depth we go. We look at the pancreas and the liver and the kidneys and the gallbladder, and we look for inflammation markers and autoimmune markers and vitamin markers, just all kinds of different things to see what's going on. And then when we get the results back, we actually color it, and I create spreadsheets basically for the patient, talking about each of the items on that list and color code it based on the severity of how bad it is, and talk about the underlying root issues and what that's associated with, whether it's associated with a fatty liver or a thing called leaky gut or inflammation at the cell level. All these different things we're talking about based on those labs.
Gotcha.
And I mean, we have all kinds of other tests we do. We do hormone tests and amino acid tests, and we do heavy metal testing, and just all kinds of different things that we can do to find out what somebody's root problems are, so we know how to best address that.
Yeah. Wow. That my 7th grade biology did not cover a lot of this stuff.
Right.
But I remember those lessons and all of the cells and all of that. But so, yeah, I'm sitting here thinking about the tests that you're running, and I think, man, do I hate getting poked by needle? I hate that. But the only thing I think I hate more than that is treatments ongoing that ultimately aren't helping me, right? Like, or are just helping me limp along without actually fixing the issue. So, I want to talk a little bit more about when we are put on these medications by our doctors, and what, like, other than not fixing the problem, what are the drawbacks to that, and what kind of things can go on with that, which is jumping on medication?
Yeah, so great question. So, yeah, when you're put on medication, unfortunately, you're not really given what I call informed consent about what the drugs are, what the possible side effects are, and what the complications might be. So you're really not given a whole lot of information. You're told, here's your metformin, go take it twice a day and exercise and lose weight, and I'll see you in 3 months. That's about all you get when you're told you're diabetic. In addition to being told you'll be on these drugs for the rest of your life. So, just for example, metformin, which is what I call the gateway drug for diabetes, 90+% of the people, when they get labeled diabetic, they're put on metformin to start with. And so metformin has some really bad side effects. One of those, and when I do my webinars, I have a slide I show this study from 2017, I believe it was, that showed that if you take metformin for just a little over 1 year, 400 days, that you have a 349% increased risk for dementia, Alzheimer's, and or Parkinson's disease, just by taking it for a little over 1 year. Most of the diabetics I work with have been on metformin for 15, 20, 30 years, okay? And they're never told this.
No. And isn't like all of those that you just mentioned, that those rates are increasing in our society, and we're all wondering why. Yeah.
In fact, dementia and Alzheimer's, I know it very well because 80% of diabetics will develop dementia, Alzheimer's. If you have type 2 diabetes, you have an 80% chance of developing they call it type 3 diabetes in the medical literature, which is Alzheimer's for diabetics. So 80% chance.
That's crazy. It actually is like making me angry a little bit. So, wow.
And that's just one side effect of one drug. I mean, you start throwing insulin and all these other things in there. Ozempic's a big thing. You know, this year, Ozempic's been the new weight loss miracle drug that everybody's going on. And they talk about Ozempic face, and what they're not talking about is the pancreatic cancers and stuff that are coming with Ozempic. And, you know, people just want this magic weight loss pill drug. And so they're doing this Ozempic, but they're not hearing about all the bad side effects. You know, the drug doctors just give it to them, hand it out like candy. But there are so many bad side effects that people don't realize they're signing up for when they start taking this drug.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's my goodness. I don't think any of us do. Well, you aside, but most of us don't do that research to find out what is this thing I'm putting in my body going to do to me? And yeah, it's frightening. It's frightening to me for sure.
Right.
So we've talked about the issues with kind of a traditional approach, the treatment of diabetes, but maybe we can back up a tiny bit and talk about, well, this always worries me because I hate having tests. I'm the worst. And so I wonder always, I like I said earlier, I have to go in and have my blood work done because my doctor's forcing me to, but I worry about those that don't get tests like me that, you know, are leaving themselves untreated a lot of times. And what are some of the negative health outcomes of untreated diabetes, even treated diabetes, I suppose, right? So
exactly. Yeah. So,
yeah,
unfortunately, that 1 out of 3 people in the United States that have diabetes, half of them don't even know they're diabetic at this point, you know, because they're kind of like you, just, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to get stuck, you know. They don't want to get stuck with the needle, right?
Yes.
Better get stuck once than have to do it every single day, injecting insulin every day, you know, 100%. Type thing. It's much, and I always tell people, you know, it's much, much easier to fix diabetes before you get to the insulin stage. Not that we don't get people off of insulin every day, but it's a lot harder to fix when you've had diabetes for 20 years and you're on 100 units of insulin every day. That's a lot more challenging. Yeah. But going back to your question, you know, what happens with diabetics naturally over time? They start having the bad side effects. So they have uncontrollable blood sugars, and this is while they're even on their medication. Sometimes for 10 or 15, 20 years, they still have uncontrollable blood sugars. You know, 1 minute you're 60, 10 minutes later you're 600. You didn't do anything different than you did the day before. They don't have the ability to lose weight. They starve themselves to death. They go to the gym 6 days a week, yet they can't lose weight. If you're shooting up insulin every day, insulin, one of its designs is to be a fat storage hormone. Insulin is a hormone, and it's designed to store sugar as fat to protect your body from having too much sugar floating around in the bloodstream and burning you up all the time. So the more insulin your body requires, either injecting or your pancreas making it, the more insulin resistant you get. The fatter you get, the more insulin resistant you get, the more insulin you need, and it becomes this vicious cycle. And so people that are put on insulin, you know, they might start off with 10 or 15 units every day, and pretty soon it graduates up to 20 and 30 and 40 and 100. And, you know, my max that I've seen is 300 units of insulin a day, yet they still had, you know, glucose numbers in the 300 and 400 range, being on 300 units of insulin. So it wasn't doing its job. And insulin causes all kinds of other damage, like kidney disease and everything else. Most diabetics end up with kidney disease. They have neuropathy. They have veins and nerves that burn up because of too much glucose, where they start chopping off your feet. Dialysis, the number one cause of kidney disease, and leading to dialysis is diabetes. The number one cause of heart attacks in this country is diabetes, and strokes is diabetes. It just burns up the most sensitive. The number one cause of blindness is diabetes. All those real sensitive tissues are the first things that get burned up because you have too much glucose in your blood. I call it slurpy blood, where you have too much sugar in the blood, and it starts burning up the most sensitive tissues first.
Wow.
So whether it's untreated diabetes or even people on diabetic medication for 15, 20 years. You would think 15 or 20 years of taking diabetes meds would fix the problem if it was actually going to fix the problem, but it never does. They just keep adding more and more meds. But all those bad side effects that I just mentioned occur with people untreated for diabetes and those that are doing treatment, the standard of care for diabetes, which is just watching you deteriorate and go downhill and just give you more and more drugs.
Wow. Okay, so I am sufficiently scared and I will go get my blood work done. So I'm thinking about, you said one thing earlier where you said it's easier to treat this if you catch it early.
Right.
If you're in the first trimester, it's easier to treat. But that person that you mentioned that was on, now I forget the numbers, 300 somethings of insulin a day.
Right.
Units, I think you said. Is that person treatable? Are they, what kind of an outlook do you have? If I'm sitting across from you in that state, what kind of an outlook do I have?
Right. Yeah. So I always tell people, if you're not on dialysis, there's a chance we can help you.
Nice. Okay.
Okay. So that's for the kidney disease.
Yeah.
If you're shooting, and if you go to our website, and look at the testimonials, there's one, but his name was Dallas, and he stands out for me because he was doing the 200 or 250 units of insulin a day. And within 3 weeks of starting the program, he was completely off his insulin.
Wow.
And that was amazing, just to see him just dramatically reduce and eliminate his need for extra insulin in just 3 weeks. That was amazing. Not everybody responds that fast. Some people, we have to gradually take them down. I had a gal today that been doing 10 units for the last 4 years, and she's off her insulin now after about 2 months with us. But she was only doing 10 units at the time, but it took us 2 months to get her to that where she doesn't need the insulin anymore. So everybody's just a little bit different and how they respond. But again, if you're not in a nursing home, you're not on dialysis, there's a chance that we can help you. And I'm always upfront with my patients. When I get the testing back, I'll let them know. I say, hey, there's nothing I can do that's going to be able to help you. I'm sorry. But here's some things that I'm going to recommend you do with your regular doc. But that doesn't happen very often. And I hate it when I have to tell somebody I can't help them, but I'm not going to, give somebody false hope either if I don't think I can help them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I definitely appreciate that honesty. And I am super curious about your approach, and maybe we can talk a little bit more. Even taking a few months to get off of a lower dose of insulin. Oh my goodness. She was marching, that girl that you talked about, just marching down that road into, a lot of health issues. So let's talk about what you do, what your approach is, with the understanding that everyone's a little bit different, but
right.
I'm super curious.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I think let me use a story to tell this approach. I've never done this before. I just thought of this. Okay. So I talk about this gal all the time, but I've never used it to describe how I do the process. So Cindy, and her name is Cindy, came to see me 6 years ago, 2017. So it'll be 6 years ago this month in August. She came to one of my webinars. In June of 2017, Cindy was told by her doctors that she needed to get her affairs in order because she was going to be dead before Christmas because her diabetes was just so bad, so out of control. She was allergic to every drug they tried to put on her. At that time, Cindy was 55 years old. She had had 54 surgeries in 55 years. She had all kinds of different cancers and all kinds of stuff going on in her life. And she was a wreck. So she came to one of my classes back when we used to hold classes live before COVID. She came to one of our classes and she walked in the door with her husband. And when she walked in, she told me this later. She says, when I walked in the door, I told my husband, said, if this guy sounds like a quack, I'm going to walk out the door. So luckily, She didn't walk out the door that day.
Mm.
So I saw Cindy the 1st of September in 2017. And we did that blood work on her, the 75 different tests, the 8 or 10 tubes. We did that blood work on her. It came back really, really bad. Her A1C was 15.7. That's the top. They don't go higher than that. When somebody's A1C is 15.7, they're in really bad shape. Her daily glucose numbers were like 400 and 600. Her day consisted of getting out of bed in the morning, going to the bathroom, going to the couch, going back to the bathroom, going back to bed. That was her day, 55 years old. She couldn't do anything. She couldn't go to the store. She couldn't go shopping, nothing, because she was just had no energy to do anything. And she was just very, very sick. And so we did that blood work on her. It came back really, really bad. And I told Cindy, I said, I don't know if we're going to be able to help you or not. But if you're going to be dead in 3 or 4 months, what do you have to lose? Let's just jump in and see what happens. So we started her on a program, and that program consisted of some major diet changes for her, cleaning up her diet to give her more of what I call an anti-inflammatory diet, taking out a lot of the bad foods, putting in some good foods. We gave her some specific supplements based on what the labs told us we need to be doing for Cindy, addressing those root causes of her inflammation. And and I said, let's just see what happens. Well, after 2 weeks, her glucose number started coming down into the 300 and 400 range. And this is without medication, where she was like 500 and 600 before when she started. At the end of September, first part of October, she told me, she says, I have a new dream. I'm not going to be dead before Christmas. I want a glucose under 100 by Christmas. I said, cool. Let's see what happens. So we just kept working with her week by week by week. I talked to her on the phone every week. She would come into the office once a month. So we changed up her program, starting to address a different level of that inflammation. So the supplements change and the diet changes all the time based on what's going on with her. And on Christmas Eve, I got a personal text from her with a picture of her glucose meter with a reading of 98.
You did it. You did it.
She did it.
You did it.
She did it.
Wow.
Today, this is 6 years ago. Today, Cindy is still alive. Cindy has a grandson that she had never met, that she followed her doctor's directive and just went home and died. Cindy averages about 14,000 steps a day now, where she averaged about 400 when she was first seen.
Wow.
She still has some issues. She's not 100%, but she is so much better today than she was 6 years ago.
Amazing.
And
wow.
It's just walking through those steps, just hand holding you and walking through the steps that you need to go through to start addressing those underlying issues.
Wow. That is an amazing story. That's really, oh, so you're not throwing meds at people.
No. My whole goal is to help patients get healthy enough that they don't need their meds anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't prescribe them. I don't take them off of them. I help them get healthy. So they go to their doctor and say, hey, doctor, take me off these things. I don't need them anymore.
Yeah.
And if they're like 90% of the people I work with that actually do what I tell them to do, they go have those conversations with their doctors, and they reduce and oftentimes eliminate their need for medication, including insulin.
Wow. So it sounds pretty easy. Just follow what you do, what you say to do. And
yeah, you just got to follow it. That's the hard part, right? We're all human, right? I'm human. I mean, I try and follow my own program, as best I can, but, I have those moments too.
Yeah.
But, I can tell you, the patients that actually do what I tell them to do, they get better.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you say that it takes a lot of effort, minimal effort, your program?
When you're 100% dedicated, it's easy effort. If you're fighting me all the time, why can't I have this? Why can't I do that? Then it's going to be a lot more challenging for you. But if you just do what I teach you to do, it's actually very easy. And most patients, everybody, including me, we have those back slips. We slip and go back downhill a little bit. But after you feel so good, you want to go back and do what you're supposed to do because you don't like the way you felt like you used to feel. You want to feel the way that you feel now, which is so much better than the way you used to feel, a few months prior to that. You don't want to go back. And so most of my patients, when they slip up, they know it, and they just feel so lousy that they get right back on track and start doing what they know they need to be doing again.
Gotcha. So my biggest question for you, we didn't talk about this beforehand, but I'm curious if white cake with buttercream frosting is part of your program by chance. Maybe it is.
Yeah,
Maybe
on your birthday, you get to have one bite of that. Okay. Yeah, that's
one
perfect.
Bite. Okay, because that would be a deal breaker if I couldn't have a bite on my birthday.
Right.
That's it. That is my downfall for sure. Has been for quite some time, but okay. All right. So I heard you say hand holding, which I always love. You walk your patients through, here's what we're going to do together. Timeframes are different for different people because we're all different and we have different things going on with us.
Right.
Yeah. But we can expect with you a teammate here, somebody walking through this with us and helping us along the way.
Yeah, exactly. And the cool thing that I love today is because technology like this, I'm able to work with patients so much easier than I have in the past. Even, my local patients, nobody knows where Sparks, Nevada is unless you guys live here. So I have to tell this joke. I've never told this joke before in my life. I think I told you. Did I tell you guys this when I met you? The joke is, and I've lived here all my life, so I can say this, that Reno is so close to hell that you can even see sparks.
Yes. Yeah.
So you always know where Sparks, Nevada is now because it's so close to Reno, which is so close to hell. Okay.
That's hilarious. I think you might have told us a joke. So,
that's why I live in Sparks and not Reno. So
that's so
it's further away. Okay. So anyway, I love working with patients. I work with patients coast to coast. I was talking to somebody in North Carolina today. I have patients in California today, in Washington today, in Utah today. I mean, I have patients everywhere. And it's because of this technology like Zoom and other things that I'm able to do that. And I've been doing it long before COVID ever came around. I was doing telemedicine, as they call it, before COVID, working with patients coast to coast. So you don't have to physically come to my office to see me. And even my local patients love it because they don't have to make a million visits going across town, even though it's only a 10 or 15-minute drive across town. But they don't have to do that drive. We can do everything remotely with them. So patients really love that. And I can do more of that hand holding remotely. And it's a lot easier to do that with patients than having to have them come into the office and sit in the office and wait and all those kinds of things. So I love being able to work with the patients one-on-one remotely like that and just be able to help them.
Yeah. Oh man, I love if there's any good thing that came from COVID, it's the ability, like more people getting used to things like this. Because like you, I used Zoom before it was cool, but yeah, it has been awesome. But I've been in your office and your offices are beautiful and your staff is amazing. And so going there isn't the worst thing in the world either.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I love seeing patients, I always tell them, I can't give you a hug over Zoom, but I can give you a hug if you're in the office. But other than that, it's the same. You get the same amount of care other than just the hug.
Nice. All right. Well, I just think that's amazing. The stories that you've told, some of your patients, your clients. So how are people finding you that are not in Sparks or Reno? Sparks is right next to Reno, but yeah.
Right. So if you go to our website, it's drdalekelly.com. So it's drdalekelly.com. That's the easiest way to get a hold of us. You can go on the website, check out, what we do. I focus primarily on 3 things. I talked about 2 on the website, diabetes and thyroid issues. And for those that might have thyroid issues, I have a disease called Hashimoto's disease myself, as an autoimmune thyroid disease. So I know a lot about that. So yet I don't take anything for my thyroid, no prescription meds, no even supplements for my thyroid at this point, because I'm always addressing the underlying inflammation, the root problem. So thyroid and diabetes are the two main issues, and then also autoimmune gut issues type thing, because they're all related. Most thyroid patients end up with diabetes. Most diabetics have thyroid issues, and they all have gut issues. And so those are the three things that I focus on in my office. So if you go to our website, drdalekelly.com, you can check us out. If you'd like to chat and see if there might be something we can help you with, on every page on that website, there's a schedule an appointment type button. I don't remember what it says, but you just click on that button and you can find a day and a time that work for you and directly get on my schedule for a free consultation to see if I might be able to help you out or not.
That is amazing. And you mentioned you do have a free consultation, which is super, super helpful for folks. I want to open this up for anyone on the call tonight to ask questions if you can. Can I steal a little bit more of your time, Dr. Kelly?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I do have, so if anyone listening, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A box, and I can read those to Dr. Kelly. But in the meantime, I do have one other question for you. And that is just, if I'm a person who, no matter where I'm at, whether I'm in Reno or somewhere else in the world, and I'm on medications that I'm wanting to get off of, I see you. How does that work with my prescribing physician and you? How can you just kind of tell me how that goes?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So like I said, I didn't put you on the meds. I don't take you off of them. That's between you and the prescribing doctor. So my job is to help you get healthy so that you can get off those medications. So, I'll have conversations with patients all the time, say, hey, you need to go to your doc, show him these labs, explain to him, how you're feeling, that, the blood pressure meds is doing too good of a job now and you're falling over, you can't stand up because your blood pressure is too low. And you got to start weaning back on these things. And so I'll have those conversations with the patients and tell them to talk to their doctors. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody's doctor that wants to talk with me and I'll have that same conversation with them. Just tell them this is what I'm doing with their patient. I'm helping them to get healthy. And you as the prescribing doctor need to have talk to them about reducing or eliminating some of their meds. They don't need them anymore.
Gotcha. So you are advocating, you're saying, hey, go back to your doctor, talk to them, monitor those things with their prescribing physician as well.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Because even legally, I can't tell them to stop taking a drug. So that's between them and the prescribing doctor. So I'm definitely not interfering with that. I just want to make sure that the patient understands that they need to talk to their doctor about getting off some of those medications.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. All right. We have a couple of questions. Zandra says, excellent show, 3 exclamation points. I know, right? And she says, wow, I didn't know I'd need tissues. Me either, Zandra. Do you accept insurance? I've always been told that diabetes is genetic. Unbelievable. I'm so grateful for all of this information. So let's talk about that.
Okay. Great. Okay. So first thing, genetics, as you just said, it's not a genetic disease. There is no diabetes gene. So, but that's the biggest myth about diabetes I hear all the time. Second of all, insurance. I have this great thing about insurance. So insurance, healthcare, I don't call it healthcare. I call it sick care. Health insurance is designed to help keep you sick. It's not designed to help you get healthy. And unfortunately, the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies are all in bed with each other. They just feed each other's hand. They're more than happy to pay for drugs and surgery and all these expensive testing and everything else, but they don't want to help you get healthy. In fact, in Medicare, and everybody goes by whatever Medicare says, pretty much everybody else follows it. So in the Medicare guidelines, there's a guideline, and I'm just paraphrasing the exact quote, but it says pretty much anything that's designed to prevent disease, get you healthy, or prolong and enhance the quality of life is considered medically unnecessary. That's the quote from Medicare. So if you think about that,
Yeah.
Isn't that the craziest statement you ever heard from an insurance company? The
Yeah.
insurance company would rather spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars every year to keep you sick, but they don't want to lift a finger to get you healthy. It would be so much cheaper to get you healthy than to keep you sick. But that's not the game that they play. And so, unfortunately, most of what we do on our office is not covered by insurance. Once in a while, they'll cover some of the blood tests and things that we do, but pretty much it is going to be an out-of-pocket expense. I always tell people, if you can afford $200 or $300 in your budget a month, we can make a program work for you. If you can buy Starbucks once a day or go to McDonald's once a day, you can do a program with us. We'll make that part work. If you have your health as number one priority, we make the money part work for you.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Yeah. So you're saying we have to give up our latte, frappe, whatever. We probably need to do that anyway, don't we?
Yeah, right.
On our birthday with the cake.
Yeah, you can have coffee and cake on your birthday, right?
That's right. Okay. All right. So Zandra says that makes sense. Thanks for explaining that. Yes, insane. I'll be making an appointment for sure. I also have a daughter who is out of state that I'd love to send your way. So yeah, you guys, I did put a clickable link to Dr. Kelly's website in the chat. If you can see that, click that before we end tonight so you can get that website easily. We got a couple other questions, Dr. Kelly. I'm going to keep you here a little bit longer.
No problem.
Sonia, hi there, Sonia. Sonia wants to know what is included in your free consultation.
So the free consult, I schedule 15 minutes for that. You're talking with me personally on the phone, one-on-one. And we just go through what's going on with you, talk about what meds you're on, what kind of symptoms you're having, just a brief history of what's going on with you, just to see if you might be a good fit for what we do in our office. So there's no, charge or obligation to it. I'm just going to give you my honest opinion, whether I think I might be able to help you or not. If I decide that I might be able to help you or not, then I invite you to take the next step, which would be a full 1-hour consultation with us. If you go through the website and look at that, we just charge $89 for that initial consult if you come through the website. So it's a big savings. It's like a $400 consult. But if you go through the website and do that free phone consult, then if I invite you to that second part, it's just $89.
Nice. Okay, so that's an answer to Sonia's next question was, what does an office or a Zoom visit cost? So fantastic. And let's see. Another question, how do you do blood work if the patient is out of state?
Great question. So there's only a couple states that we don't work in. One is a couple of the Northeast states like New York and New Jersey. They just have funny laws about people getting blood work from somebody other than their primary care doctor. Some weird rule they have. So I don't work with people in those couple of states. But other than that, when we do blood work, most of the time, because insurance isn't going to pay for the blood work. I mean, if insurance will pay for the blood work, we're more than happy to let them do it. So let me give you how great this deal is. So if I do my 75-point blood test and I give you a lab slip and you take it to the lab, wherever lab you're, go to, wherever you're at, they're going to charge you, if your insurance doesn't cover it, they're going to charge you about $6,500 for that panel. That's what that panel runs. Because insurance doesn't want to pay for it, what I do with 95+% of my patients, if your insurance isn't going to cover it, we run it through me and you guys pay what it costs me to do. So that 75-point panel that costs $6,500 costs me $392 to do the same thing. And so that's what the majority of our patients do, is they just pay us. It goes under my contract. I send you to your local LabCorp, wherever you're at. It doesn't matter what state. You just go into your local LabCorp, you give them that piece of paper, they know what to do with it. I've already paid for it, and I get the results a couple of weeks later.
Wow, you really do. You're working with people, making it work for them. I really appreciate that. Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. Okay, so looking through these, I think Sonia has another question. Does your process help people not diagnosed with diabetes, but with other things?
So again, that's where that phone consult comes in. So I do work with some other people with other issues. I have a gal right now that has Parkinson's disease, but not diabetic. We just started working with her. I have some other what I call strange things going on that people just have no idea. You know, one lady, she's dizzy all the time and nobody could find out what was wrong with her. And so we did the blood work and found some underlying problems for her, changed up her diet and gave her a couple of supplements, and her dizziness that she's had for like 5 years, couldn't even hardly get out of bed, is now gone. And so yeah, so it's on a case-by-case basis for those other things. And even the diabetes and the thyroid issues, it's still on a case-by-case basis. Some people ask about type 1 diabetics. If you guys don't know the difference between type 2 and type 1 is a diabetic that is what's called insulin dependent. Their pancreas basically quit making insulin for some reason, whether it was they were a kid or an adult. They used to call it juvenile diabetes because it was mostly in kids. But those people are on insulin and they have to be on insulin technically for the rest of their life. But even patients like that, that's a case-by-case basis. I've worked with a few type 1 diabetics and dramatically reduced their need for insulin. They still have to do a little bit, but the less insulin you have to do, the much healthier you're going to be in the long run. So there are some other conditions that I do work with, autoimmune problems. They all are gut related, all autoimmune problems, MS, lupus, other things are all gut related. So we'll work with those patients on a case-by-case basis.
Gotcha. Okay. So if I'm someone who has not been diagnosed with anything, or my doctor doesn't know what's going on with me and I'm not feeling well, it may behoove me to come and have you take a look at that panel, the blood work, and just see, and you'll give an honest kind of view and opinion of all of those points. That's what I'm
definitely. And we'll look at people's, blood work they've had done from other doctors and hospitals or whatever, and see what they've tested and see what we need to do in addition to what they've already had done, and kind of take it from there.
Nice. Okay. Fantastic. Let's see. Oh, Zandra says, great question from Sonia. To piggyback on that, what about high cholesterol testing and treatment?
So don't get me started on cholesterol.
Uh-oh. What have you done, Zandra?
So cholesterol is a great business tool, or business maker, I guess I should say, for the pharmaceutical industry. It's the golden cow for the pharmaceutical industry. Lipitor, or atorvastatin, the generic form of it, is like one of the biggest selling drugs ever for the pharmaceutical industry. Cholesterol is not the problem. You guys have all been taught that cholesterol is what plugs up your arteries and what's going to give you the stroke and the heart attack. It's not cholesterol. Cholesterol is doing its job. It's going in and patching up the tears in your arteries and stuff that are caused by the inflammation. But cholesterol gets labeled the bad guy because that's what they see when they look under the microscope. It's not the cholesterol. So do I work with patients with high cholesterol? Yes, all the time. And we talk about cholesterol and the bad side effects of the cholesterol medication. In fact, if you guys are on a statin drug or cholesterol drug, something that ends in statin, atorvastatin, pravastatin, whatever statin, do you know that you're guaranteed to become diabetic according to the FDA? The FDA has a black box warning on all your cholesterol drugs that say that you will become diabetic, not may, but will become diabetic if you take that drug long enough. So it's guaranteed that you'll be diabetic. And if you're already diabetic, you're on what I call the diabetic cocktail, which is a diabetes medication like metformin or something. Most of the doctors will put you on a cholesterol medication, even though you don't have high cholesterol. They'll put you on a blood pressure medication, even though you don't have high blood pressure, because they're trying to prevent you from having more problems, which just ends up causing more problems. So don't let the pharmaceutical industry, the news media, whatever, tell you that cholesterol is the problem. Yeah. Don't eat your Cheerios because it's going to lower your cholesterol and make you healthy. That's a total lie.
Cheerios are gross anyway, that's just my opinion, but all right. So Zandra says, whoa, I refuse statins. Lowering through diet is what she said.
Good job.
Yeah, right. Right. Zondra's amazing. So, all right. And Sonia says, thank you, Dr. Kelly. And thank you, Jolynn. I appreciate you all for coming. And Dr. Kelly, thank you so much, man. What a
Thanks.
treat to have such an amazing doctor in front of us for this time. I thank you so much. And yeah, the website's there in the chat. You guys, do you have anything that we haven't covered that you think is important to include?
So just one last thing I'll just share for those that may have some chronic health issues that aren't being addressed. If you've been on diabetes medications for 15, 20 years, whatever, you might want to ask your doctor, hey, Dr. Jones, how many people have you personally helped reverse their type 2 diabetes? And you guys might be surprised by the answer. Probably
Reverse?
not.
What's that?
What's that? You can't reverse diabetes. So if you want to reverse your type 2 diabetes, you have to work with somebody that knows how to reverse it. You have to have somebody that's experienced in knowing how to fix these chronic health problems and knows how to undo the damage that's been done with you. If you just keep doing the same old thing that you're doing right now, you're going to get the same results. You have to do something different if you want to get your health back on track. And the last thing I'll say is, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you're at right now and change the ending.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's a great way to end. And Zondra says this has been incredible. Thank you so very much, Jolynn and Dr. Kelly. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming. Thanks for all the fantastic questions too. Dr. Kelly, I really appreciate you.
All right. Thank you for having me.
All right. We'll see you.
Bye.
Bye everyone.